The thermal signature flared red against the steel-gray screen, and unmistakable. Crest buried beneath what everyone assumed was just a threadbare uniform. The sniper froze. So did the drone operator. The woman kneeling behind the barricade didn't move, didn't speak, didn't blink. But the crest pulsed through the thermals like it had waited long enough. Nobody said a word. Rain had slicked the gravel to mirror-like sheen, and the scent of ozone clung to the air. Kira Holtz adjusted the strap of the ancient canvas duffel, biting into her shoulder as she passed the checkpoint. One guard yawned. The other gave her uniform a once-over and smirked. "Lost your way to a museum, Corporal?" Kira didn't answer. She kept walking bootsteps even. Deliberate, too quiet to be confident, too controlled to be insecure. She was placed with Section 9, which wasn't a compliment. The training compound's west field was reserved for washouts, outliers, and those too green or too broken to fit the aggressive tempo of the other units. The guys stationed there were either cocky with nothing to back it, or too tired to care anymore. No one expected much from Section 9, especially not from a woman with a uniform so faded it looked pre-World War. By 05:00 the next morning, she'd already been run through orientation. No one remembered her name, but they remembered the duffel patches stitched on like museum relics, a faded blood type, an airborne tab half sewn on, a tear in the sleeve she hadn't fixed, probably her granddad's uniform, someone muttered. She didn't correct them. By the third day, she was sweeping the drone pen alone. Her name finally registered when Sergeant Dune shouted across the compound, "Holtz, you're supposed to calibrate those IR modules, not stare at the damn mountains." She had been staring, but not idly. She was watching the ridgeline because it was wrong. Kira hadn't meant to stand out. In fact, she was trying her hardest not to blend, disappear, do the menial work, say little, avoid notice. But the ridgeline was still wrong. 3 days prior, it had been symmetrical. She'd walked the perimeter, made quiet mental notes, habit from childhood hikes with her father, who taught her how to read elevation shifts before she could spell altimeter. Now, there was a shelf of rock that hadn't been there. Just a few meters, but enough. No one else seemed to care. So she said nothing. She just recalibrated the IR module, like she was told, and adjusted the frequency gain. And fine-tuned the passive triangulation. By hand. The old way, when the breach came. No one was ready. At 0217, the perimeter alarm flickered, then fell silent. Kung scrambled. 2 guards swore it was a fox. Kira was in the drone pen again. Alone. She saw the shift first, not on radar, but in heat, a thin, layered pulse rising like steam off ice. That ridge. Still wrong. She ran a sweep, isolated the wavelength. Someone, or something, was hiding beneath thermal camo, edging closer to the outer south fence. She patched the feed to Dune. "Malfunction," he barked back, but she didn't close the window. She enhanced it, and there it was, the insignia, embedded in them. Intruder's armor, a crest she hadn't seen in 9 years. Not since her mother's last deployment. Classified, forgotten, burned from databases. Until now. Kira was already moving. She didn't ask permission. She grabbed the thermal scope, slung her old field jacket over her shoulder, and ran. The outer field was soaked. Wind sharp. Darkness folded in layers, but she moved through it like water calculated. UNF ing. At the fence, she dropped to one knee, just as the shape crested. The ridge. She didn't breathe, didn't blink, didn't flinch. The scope read. The heat again, and this time, it wasn't just the intruder. It was her. The patch on her shoulder hidden under years of dust and field. Grime pulsed red against the lens. Same crest, same frequency, and just like that, the system linked them. An override alert snapped through the mainframe. Security feed lit up. Everyone saw it. The crust wasn't just some relic. It was an active cipher. An identifier. An access key. And she had it. Sergeant Dune stood frozen in the ops room. Who the hell is she? No one answered. The woman with the threadbare uniform wasn't just watching anymore. She was aiming. And she wasn't aiming wrong. Drop a. If you've ever been underestimated. Tap subscribe. If you've ever been in a room where no one remembered your name until they had to. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're from. If this story moves you, please subscribe. Tomorrow, I have a special story for you. Sergeant Dune's voice cracked through the static-laced PA system as alarms blared across every terminal in the compound. All units locked down the perimeter. Intruder at Sector South. Identify. But the feed already did. The thermal overlay on the main screen showed two red blurs, one pacing just beyond the fence and another kneeling at the breach point. Both imprinted with the same hidden crest, evidence of an elite unit presumed disbanded years ago. Instantly, comms lit up with panicked voices. Sir, that's Section 1's crest. They were decommissioned. Who the hell is she? Dune barked at the junior officer at the console. Kira Holtz, sir. But Dune cut him off. Corporal Holtz? That faded uniform? She's in. Section 9. Silence. Then the junior officer stammered, Sir. She's one and the same. Dune's jaw tightened. Show me the live feed. The ovoid glow of the thermal monitors flickered as Dune strode across the metal-grated floor. He'd ordered Holtz to sit tight in the command tent to avoid interfering in real operations, but here she was leading the charge. Lieutenant Farrow, deploy the countermeasure drones. Dune ordered, voice low but urgent. And get me sensor data on that patch frequency. Holtz remained crouched, one hand gripping the thermal scope's adjustment knob, the other resting on the cold, rough barrel of her vintage sniper rifle. She toggled the magnification dial until the red crest on her own shoulder came into sharp. Relief etched into the fabric by custom embroidery, nearly invisible to the naked eye. Back in the ops room, Dune studied the pattern. Those patches, they're modulated at 34.7 kHz, encrypted on 3 shifting subbands. Section 1 cipher. He looked at the monitor. Just a few meters beyond the fence, the intruder, a tall figure in full armor-shifted position, the crimson crest. Glowing softly, they raised their weapon. A silent threat. You see that? Dune barked at the comms officer. Attempt to disable that optical sensor array. The comms officer's fingers flew over the keyboard. They're locked behind. Dual off. Only Section 1 overrides. Dune ran a hand through his hair. He turned to the junior officer. Corporal, get her on the line. Sir, she's still in the field. Dune slammed a fist on the console. Then broadcast my override request. Moments later, static. Hummed in Holtz's earpiece. A single clipped voice came through. Proceed with caution. Section 1 protocol. Code Black. Holtz's heart thundered. Code Black. The highest alert only invoked for Section 1 operatives on active missions. Section 9 had no business receiving it. Copy that, she whispered, voice steady. She activated the rifle's thermal illuminator, bathing the dark field in eerie white light. The intruder froze, thermal feed spiking, crest glowing like a beacon. She exhaled and squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked, a resonant boom that rolled across the compound, echoing off steel and concrete. The projectile struck the armored intruder's shoulder plate, embedding itself with a shower of molten metal. Instantly, the figure vanished into the shadows, retreating at impossible speed. Holtz didn't hesitate. She vaulted over the fence, landing in a crouch and sprinting after the target. Rain pelted her face, turning her vision into a blur of raindrops and tracer lights. But she kept moving, calculated, precise steps, a dancer on polished wood. Inside the ops room, Dune watched the secondary feed. The compound security lights flicked on, spraying the field with harsh white beams. The intruder was gone. Lost visual, the junior officer reported, voice hollow. Dune closed his eyes. He cursed under his breath and turned to the lieutenant. Evacuate non-essential personnel. I want full lockdown. And find that patch encryption. I want answers now. Suddenly, the comms officer's console pinged. Sir, thermal signature. Reappearing at Southwest Tower, Dune shot to his feet. Show me. The main screen shifted to the southeast watchtower, just above the concrete barrier. The intruder's silhouette was there, hunched behind the slanted top, crest glowing. Holtz emerged from the rain at the tower's base, rifle leveled upward. Above her, the intruder raised a hand, palm facing outward. A pulse of energy steamed across the tower's lower sensors, frying the nearby cameras. The feed went dead. Holtz cursed. She slid into the tower's shadow, hand sliding to her thigh. Holster. She retrieved the old sidearm calibrated in her mother's lab, silent, deadly, and climbed the ladder 2 rungs at a time. By the time she reached the top platform, the rain had turned into a torrent. The wind howled like an angry beast, tearing at loose panels, rattling the tower's frame. Holtz could barely see, but she could feel it, because she smelled the faint tang of ozone, and she heard the whispered hum of forbidden tech. She crept to the edge of the platform, peering over. The intruder stood at the opposite corner, rifle slung across their back, adjusting the length of a gauntlet that glowed with internal circuitry. Holtz's pulse quickened, but her grip remained steady. She aimed a sidearm dot at that exact moment. The tower shuddered. A low-frequency vibration rolled through the metal. The compound's generators kicked in, sending a surge of power down every line. The watchtower's floodlights flared white-hot, momentarily blinding everything in their radius. Holtz shielded her eyes. When the glare subsided, the intruder was gone, her breath caught in her throat. Because they hadn't jumped, they'd melted into the structure. The circuitry under the floor grates glowed blue, and a panel behind her slid open. And then a voice, soft, mechanical, modulated, filled the chamber. Corporal Holtz, it said. Welcome back. Droppa, if you've ever been. The only one who knew something no one else could. Comment below. What secret do you wish you could reveal? Her next move would decide everything, and there was no turning back. Sergeant Dune's voice cracked through the static-laced PA system as alarms blared across every terminal in the compound. All units, lock down the perimeter. Intruder at Sector South. Identify. But the feed already did. The thermal overlay on the main screen showed 2 red blurs, one pacing just beyond the fence and another kneeling at the breach point. Both imprinted with the same hidden crest, evidence of an elite unit presumed disbanded years ago. Instantly, comms lit up with panicked voices. Sir, that's Section 1's crest. They were decommissioned. Who the hell is she? Dune barked at the junior officer at the console. Kira Holtz, sir. But Dune cut him off. Corporal Holtz? That faded uniform? She's in Section 9. Silence. Then the junior officer stammered, Sir. She's one and the same. Dune's jaw tightened. Show me the live feed. The ovoid glow of the thermal monitors flickered as Dune strode across the metal-grated floor. He'd ordered Holtz to sit tight in the command tent, to avoid interfering in real operations, but here she was leading the charge. Lieutenant Farrow, deploy the countermeasure drones. Dune ordered, voice low but urgent. And get me sensor data on that patch frequency. Holtz remained crouched, one hand gripping the thermal scope's adjustment knob, the other resting on the cold, rough barrel of her vintage sniper rifle. She toggled the magnification dial until the red crest on her own shoulder came into sharp relief, etched into the fabric by custom embroidery, nearly invisible to the naked eye. Back in the ops room, Dune studied the pattern. Those patches, they're modulated at 34.7 kilohertz, encrypted on 3 shifting sub-bands. Section 1 cipher. He looked at the monitor. Just a few meters beyond the fence, The intruder, a tall figure in full armor, shifted position, the crimson crest glowing softly. They raised their weapon. A silent threat. "You see that?" Dune barked at the comms officer. "Attempt to disable that optical sensor array." The comms officer's fingers flew over the keyboard. "They're locked behind." "Duel off. Only Section 1 overrides." Dune ran a hand through his hair. He turned to the junior officer. "Corporal, get her on the line." "Sir, she's still in the field." Dune slammed a fist on the console. "Then broadcast my override request." Moments later, static hummed in Holtz's earpiece. A single clipped voice came through. "Proceed with caution." "Section 1 protocol. Code Black." Holtz's heart thundered. Code Black, the highest alert only invoked for Section 1 operatives on active missions. Section 9 had no business receiving it. "Copy that," she whispered, voice steady. She activated the rifle's thermal illuminator, bathing the dark field in eerie white light. The intruder froze, thermal feed spiking, Crest glowing like a beacon. She exhaled and squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked, a resonant boom that rolled across the compound, echoing off steel and concrete. The projectile struck the armored intruder's shoulder plate, embedding itself with a shower of molten metal. Instantly, the figure vanished into the shadows, retreating at impossible speed. Holtz didn't hesitate. She vaulted over the fence, landing in a crouch and sprinting after the target. Rain pelted her face, turning her vision into a blur of raindrops and tracer lights. But she kept moving, calculated, precise steps, a dancer on polished wood. Inside the ops room, Dune watched the secondary feed. The compound security lights flicked on, spraying the field with harsh white beams. The intruder was gone. "Lost visual," the junior officer reported, voice hollow. Dune closed his eyes. He cursed under his breath and turned to the lieutenant. "Evacuate non-essential personnel. I want full lockdown. And find that patch encryption. I want answers now." Suddenly, the comms officer's console pinged. "Sir, thermal signature." Reappearing at Southwest Tower, Dune shot to his feet. "Show me." The main screen shifted to the Southeast Watchtower, just above the concrete barrier. The intruder's silhouette was there, hunched behind the slanted top, crest glowing. Holtz emerged from the rain at the tower's base, rifle leveled upward. Above her, the intruder raised a hand, palm facing outward. A pulse of energy steamed across the tower's lower sensors, frying the nearby cameras. The feed went dead. Holtz cursed. She slid into the tower's shadow, hand sliding to her thigh. "Holster." She retrieved the old sidearm calibrated in her mother's lab, silent, deadly, and climbed the ladder 2 rungs at a time. By the time she reached the top platform, the rain had turned into a torrent. The wind howled like an angry beast, tearing at loose panels, rattling the tower's frame. Holtz could barely see, but she could feel it, because she smelled the faint tang of ozone, and she heard the whispered hum of forbidden tech. She crept to the edge of the platform, peering over. The intruder stood at the opposite corner, rifle slung across their back, adjusting the length of a gauntlet that glowed with internal circuitry. Holtz's pulse quickened, but her grip remained steady. She aimed a sidearm dot at that exact moment. The tower shuddered. A low-frequency vibration rolled through the metal. The compound's generators kicked in, sending a surge of power down every line. The watchtower's floodlights flared white-hot, momentarily blinding everything in their radius. Holtz shielded her eyes. When the glare subsided, the intruder was gone, her breath caught in her throat. Because they hadn't jumped, they'd melted into the structure. The circuitry under the floor grates glowed blue, and a panel behind her slid open. And then a voice, soft, mechanical, modulated, filled the chamber. "Corporal Holtz," it said. "Welcome back. Droppa if you've ever been." The only one who knew something no one else could. Comment below. What secret do you wish you could reveal? Her next move would decide everything, and there was no turning back. Holtz didn't flinch. She pivoted on the balls of her feet, sidearm up, braced, and ready to fire into the darkness behind her. But the open panel revealed no attacker. Just a shaft, narrow, metallic, slick with condensation, and threaded with blue bioluminescent wire. No access ladder, only a drop. And beneath it, an almost imperceptible hum, like a reactor breathing, like something asleep but aware. "Welcome back," the voice repeated, softer this time, as if luring her inward. Holtz holstered her weapon, pulled the strap of her rifle tighter against her chest. Then, without a word, she stepped into the shaft. The fall wasn't long, maybe 10 feet. She landed in a crouch on a cold, composite surface. Lights flickered to life low, cyan recessed in hexagonal panels across the ceiling. The chamber she now stood in was domed, ringed with storage lockers and embedded consoles. All the consoles bore the same crest. Hers. Back at the compound's main ops center, Dune paced like a caged wolf. "Find her, now." "She's off the network, sir," the comms officer said. The tracking chip embedded in her left shoulder went dark the second the tower surge hit. She could be dead. The junior officer beside him cleared his throat. "Sir, if she were dead, we wouldn't be receiving this." He hit a key, and the main screen lit with lines of cascading code familiar to Dune, yet foreign, because it was Section 1 cipher again. System booting itself. Then the message appeared. Holtz active. Station 7 reinitializing. Protocol Helix. Dune's voice dropped to a whisper. That facility was buried. The junior officer's eyes widened. "There's a facility under the tower." There was. Holtz swept her gaze across the chamber. A biometric scanner flickered to life beside the nearest console. Without hesitation, she placed her palm against it. Identity confirmed. Operative Kira Holtz. Section 1. A deep clunk echoed as one of the lockers hissed open. Inside, gear. Black tactical mesh. Advanced optics. Reinforced gloves. Weapons she hadn't seen since she was 23 and her mother was still alive. She reached in, pulled out the comms band. It still bore the serial she remembered and the initials. "MH" for Dr. Mariana Holtz. Her mother died as she slipped the band onto her wrist. The interface lit up and a hollow display unfurled. Video logs, encrypted maps, surveillance layers overlaid. Onto the terrain above. And then a file. Redacted, Project Eidolon. Holtz tapped it. The room dimmed and her mother's face appeared. "If you're watching this, it means the seal has been broken. The intruder protocol has activated. Kira, baby. I'm sorry. I told them you weren't ready. But you always were. They buried Project Eidolon to protect it. But that crest you wear, it was never just a symbol. It's a beacon. It calls the network home." Holtz's throat tightened. She swallowed hard, but her mother's voice wrapped around her like a forgotten warmth. "You'll find the ghost signature near the ridge. The one that moves like smoke and vanishes before impact. That's not a man, Kira. That's a vessel. An Eidolon scout. And it's looking for you, because you're the last." The holla dimmed. The room pulsed. She stood frozen, the meaning unraveling. She wasn't just some forgotten operative in a defunct program. She was the program now. The rifle on her back suddenly felt heavier, like it knew. She began suiting up. The gloves molded perfectly to her fingers. The armor flexed like it remembered her frame. Minutes later, she stepped out of the hidden vault and back into the shaft. The ladder had deployed now automatically, like it had been waiting. She climbed out outside. The storm had calmed. But tension buzzed through the compound. Lieutenant Farrell approached Dune. "Sir, drones are tracking a low-frequency pulse originating from the tower." Dune's hands clenched. And the pulse is coded with a double helix signature. Dune's eyes narrowed. "That confirms it. She's reactivated Eidolon." At that moment, The perimeter cameras flickered, and something moved across the western ridge. Holtz emerged from the base of the tower, clad in black tactical mesh, insignia now glowing faintly. The rain had slowed to a mist, and the ground crunched beneath her boots. She didn't go to the command tent. She didn't report in. She headed for the western ridge, because the message had said so, because the thing in armor, the one that moved like smoke, wasn't done. And neither was she. Drop A if you've ever felt something stir awake inside you. Drop A if you know what it's like to carry a legacy no one else sees. Tomorrow, the hunt begins, and what she finds in the dark will redefine everything. To be continued. The mist blanketed the compound in a soft veil as the early hours crept past. 300. Silence lay heavy like a storm coiled under glass. And every camera, every sensor, every guard remained on edge, alert, but unsure what exactly they were preparing for. Kira Holtz didn't wait for orders. She moved across the field with fluid intent, her new gear adjusting like a second skin, syncing silently with her vitals. The embedded crest in her shoulder lit only for infrared, an ancient cipher in the eyes of modern security. Invisible to most, but the system remembered. Idolin remembered. Back inside the ops room, Dune had gone quiet. He stood with arms crossed, eyes fixed on the southwest surveillance feed as Holtz's figure grew smaller, climbing toward the ridge. She's not deviating from the grid, Faro noted. Straight to the west sector. Of course not, Dune muttered. It's where the last ghost ping came from. The comms officer swiveled in his chair. Sir, she's radio silent. Protocol violation. Dune didn't answer. He simply walked to the encrypted archive console and keyed in his access. It took 3 separate retina scans, a bone conductivity pass, and a physical key from his neck. With a hiss, the black panel console opened. The junior officer leaned in. What's that? Everything we were told to forget, Dune said. He tapped the screen. Project EDOLO in status. Dormant access level. Nullified, except now the display flickered. Reactivated. Reclassified. Operative. Kira Altizai mission. Redirect sub-protocol. Ghost H. Dune read the old brief aloud. Vapor Trace Infiltration Unit. Biodaptive armor. Autonomous cognitive mimicry. Last seen deployed at Breakwater Exfil. 5 confirmed fatalities. Unrecoverable. Faro whispered, You think the intruder is that thing? I think it never stopped hunting. Holtz paused at the ridgeline. The air had changed, not colder, but quieter, oppressive, as if even nature knew not to whisper here. She crouched, brushing a gloved hand over the moss-covered rock. Wet. Cold. The ridge here had never been symmetrical. The false ledge was a fabrication, a sensor field bent over folded terrain. She scanned it with her forearm module. The holographic overlay revealed what others couldn't see. A fissure dot, not natural dot, cut clean by heat. She exhaled slowly, letting instinct replace breath. She unclipped the scope from her rifle, turned the gain up, and peered through dot footprints. Just 2. Heavy pressure points. Deliberate step spacing. Weight estimate. 240 pounds in armor. Moving northeast toward the hydro. Conduit junction. She stood and followed. The conduit tunnel was a relic from early compound. Infrastructure abandoned years ago when the new grid came online. It ran under the hills, between reservoirs and solar panel arrays, and most dismissed it as sealed. But Holtz knew better. She descended into the dark mouth of the conduit. Flashlight off, scope toggled to thermal. Inside, echoes stretched endlessly, muffled only by the drip of condensation and the slow whir of air cycling through obsolete vents. Then she stopped. Faint heat smear, residual body print. Still fresh. She traced the path up a side ladder and into an old pump station. There, the scout waited. It wasn't armed. It didn't need to be. From a distance, it looked human. Too human. But Holtz saw the telltale shimmer of shifting texture, the armor adapting in subtle waves, Mimicking muscle tension and pulse rhythms, It looked at her, not like a machine, like a twin. The scout's face mirrored her own. She froze. But only for a heartbeat. She fired. The round connected, splintering through the illusion, revealing segments of crystalline mesh beneath false skin. The thing staggered back, but didn't fall. It spoke, and the voice it used was hers. Kira Holtz. Project Eidolon terminated. Return to station for memory dissolution. She stepped forward. Override. Command Holtz Theta 1. The scout hesitated. Kira Holtz is not authorized. Incorrect. Authorization reactivated under Protocol Helix. She transmitted the frequency from her shoulder crest. The scout spasmed momentarily. GLITCHE. And then it screamed. The sound was modulated, part machine, part grief, part recognition. It lunged faster than she anticipated. They collided, crashing through rusted piping, tangled in limbs and wires, and forgotten blood. Holtz drew her sidearm and emptied 3 rounds into the torso cavity. Each one tore deeper, exposing the glowing mesh core. The scout finally stilled. A final message flickered in its visor before it shut down. Eidolon Prime, awakening. In the compound ops room, all screens went dark. Pharaoh cursed. P Spike. Dune slammed his palm on the console. Holtz, can anyone raise her? But no comms worked. Then one feed flickered back, a single frame. Holtz's crest glowing brighter than ever. Then black. Drop a, if you're still with her in the dark. Drop a, if you've ever had to face a mirror that lied to you, tomorrow. She finds out what Eidolon Prime truly is, and why it was hidden in plain sight. To be continued. Rain returned as a whisper. It slid down the rusted siding of the pump station in rhythmic pulses, soaking through crumbled mesh and broken conduit. Beneath it all, Kira Holtz crouched next to the fallen scout, her rifle slung low and her fingers twitching involuntarily. The biometric signature had shut down. But not the danger. The scout's core, a pulsing cluster of crystalline nodes laced in adaptive wire, still glowed, not brightly, but persistently. Each flicker a Morse code she couldn't translate. Yet. She pulled the emitter tool from her side pouch and clamped it onto the core. A soft buzz responded. Her forearm interface blinked. Query. Language unstable input accepted, data stream decryption -6%. And then a single ping. Coordinates. Latitude, longitude, altitude, timestamped. 24 minutes ahead. It wasn't a storage beacon. It was a meeting point. Holtz stood back at the compound. Chaos tightened its grip. Dune stood behind the sealed door of the comms vault, arms braced against a table of inert terminals. Each display tried and failed to reboot. Every antenna fried. No network, no backup drone feed. Only static and panic. Lieutenant Pharaoh spoke quietly beside him. If she's gone dark, sir, we can't confirm whether she's still alive. She's not dead, Dune snapped. If she were, the encryption on that crest wouldn't still be pinging base-level access nodes. Then what is she? Dune stared at the red-lit consoles. She's doing what Section 1 trained her for, alone. Holtz exited the tunnel, climbing into what remained of a weather station that once overlooked the western ridge. It wasn't much now, just a shell of steel bones, a half-collapsed roof, and fragments of shattered glass that chimed like 1,000 warnings. Her HUD sensed with the beacon. A waypoint flashed against her vision, floating just beyond the nearest ravine. She set out. The meeting point was an open stretch of gravel between 2 broken surveillance towers, their twisted antennae pointing toward the stars like ribs torn from something larger. The ground bore signs of compression, heavy footfalls, scorched earth, some residue of combustion. And then she saw the second scout. It wasn't cloaked, it wasn't hiding, it stood beside a sleek, low-profile transport hovering inches above the dirt, humming low, no visible propulsion system. As she approached, it turned. It looked nothing like her. No mimicry, No deceit, but it wore her crest. And that was worse. She raised her rifle. Identify. The scout didn't flinch. Eidolon Prime. Phase 0. Holtz blinked. Phase 0 had been declassified decades ago. The theoretical model of synthetic command, not combat, not surveillance, but strategic initiative. The ghost in the war room. You're operational? She asked. The scout tilted its head. Phase 0 is not a unit. It is a seed. Grown when triggered by field activation. You wore the signal. She lowered the rifle slightly. You mean I activated you? No, it said. You invited us. She stepped closer. Why now? The scout's body shimmered as if heat coursed beneath its frame. The outer mesh reads threat elevation. You reached the threshold. What threshold? Integration. Holtz felt something tighten in her chest. Her mother's voice echoed from the vault recording. You were always ready. The scout stepped aside. Enter. Prime accepts. You. She looked at the transport sleek as glass, seamless, etched only with the same glowing helix. Now embedded in her shoulder. She climbed aboard. Inside was ... silence. No cockpit. No controls. Just light. And then the interface spoke. Welcome, Operative Holtz. Neural handshake initializing. A soft prick touched her temples, two near-invisible probes descending from the arch above. She didn't resist. They pressed gently into her skin, and the world melted. She was back in the tower, but not as it was. As it had been. Steel intact. Systems running. Her mother alive. Dr. Mariana Holtz turned to her, but it wasn't real. She knew that. Still, the warmth flooded her. Mariana reached out, placing a hand on Kira's shoulder. Kira, I couldn't stop them. Eidolon Prime was always going to awaken. Why me? Because you were never their weapon. You were mine. And then the tower dissolved. She snapped back into the present. Sweat on her skin. Heart pounding. The interface pulsed. Command sync complete. Eidolon Prime active transfer. Authorization. Holtz status. Interim commander. She didn't speak. She just breathed. And then the scout outside the transport turned. The compound is compromised. Ghost units are inbound. How many? Holtz asked. 6. Linked through unknown relay. We cannot jam them. They are searching for you. She stepped off the transport. Rain struck her skin like static. Then we don't hide, she said. We hunt. Drop a if you'd walk into the dark to finish what someone else started. Drop a if you're the one who carries memories no one else believes. Tomorrow, Eidolon Prime wages war, and Kira learns what it means to command the thing. That was never supposed to exist. To be continued. The gravel groaned beneath her boots as Kira Holtz stepped forward, each movement deliberate, each breath steady in the rising wind. Behind her, the Eidolon scout powered down the transport and disappeared into the mist, becoming nothing more than a shadow swallowed by the rising fog. The rain had grown colder, sharper, like needles instead of drops. It no longer felt like weather. It felt like surveillance. Inside the compound's reactivated underground archive, Sergeant Dune's fingers flew across the terminal. He bypassed outdated biometric gates and cut through deprecated encryption. Each bypass a reminder that the system was built by people who'd never expected it to turn back on. Pharaoh watched over his shoulder. What are you looking for? Phase 0 protocols, Dune muttered. You think she's made contact? I think she is the contact. The screen lit with partial diagrams, garbled records, and redacted mission logs. At the center, an interlocked spiral familiar. The Helix Crest. An old video log autoplayed. Subject: Dr. Mariana Holtz. Timestamp: T113 days before Eidolon lockdown. I warned them. We built something we couldn't unbuild. Eidolon Prime was never supposed to reach Phase 0, but the scouts, the synthetic twins, they're learning, adapting. And Kira. She single quotes as the last one they can't predict. Kira climbed to the overlooked tower's edge. where the terrain dipped into a shallow basin ringed by metal husks, old comms towers, drone wreckage, and forgotten relay dishes, now moss-covered tombstones of innovation. Her HUD pinged again. Incoming. Ghost signature. Vector East count. 6 sync status. Unknown engagement threshold. Breach. She activated her comms band. Prime. How many ghost units are fully functional? The scout's voice came through static. All, and they are converging. ETA? 7 minutes. She toggled her interface. Engage. Override grid authorize. Holtzke 1 beneath her boots. The basin HUMMED. Pylons emerged from the mud like forgotten spears. Drones, ancient, boxy, jagged, rose from their stasis vaults. The old grid was awake. So was she. The first ghost appeared in the mist like a myth. It walked upright, fluid, more human than its predecessors. But its skin shimmered, almost translucent in the gaps between rainfall. She didn't wait. She fired. The sniper round cracked like a whip across the basin. It struck center mass. The ghost staggered, reeled, then dissolved, its body pixelating before collapsing in a heap of soft glowing residue. One down, the others closed in. In the compound, red emergency lights strobed through the main barracks. A pair of junior operators bolted into the hallway. Sir, drone systems from the old East Bay are activating. Pharaoh glanced at Dune. What the hell is she doing out there? She's not surviving, Dune said. She's retaliating. 3 ghosts flanked the ridge, moving in synchronized arcs, dodging behind crags and outcroppings with practiced elegance. Holtz rolled across the basin, vaulting over collapsed debris, her HUD tracking all 3. Prime, deploy interference. Field, she ordered, deployed. A low-frequency pulse rippled through the ground. 1 ghost froze mid-movement, glitched, spasmed and shattered under another round from Holtz's rifle. 2. But the third reached her. It didn't speak. It just attacked. She ducked the first strike, spun low, and swept its legs. It twisted, midair, and landed cat-like. Then came the second strike. This one connected. Pain flashed across her ribs as she hit the dirt. She rolled back, side-down drawn, and fired point blank. The ghost's head exploded in a shimmer of static and bone-white filaments. 3. She was bleeding now. Her HUD blinked red. Vital drop, 8% adrenaline threshold. Override engage. She steadied herself. No time for wounds. Above her, 2 more ghosts descended. One carried a weapon. The other carried her face. She aimed at the gun first, fired. Disabled. The twin version of her sprinted toward the basin floor, mirroring her gait exactly. Every movement a replica. Holtz's breath shortened. Then came the voice. Hesitate, and we own you. She remembered the vault. The tower. The mockery. She didn't hesitate. She shot. The twin lunged mid-burst, caught the shot in the shoulder, and still came. They collided hard. Both weapons flew. Fists now, but Holtz fought like someone who'd been sparring since childhood. Her mother had taught her nerve points. Her father had taught her pressure timing, and she wasn't afraid. 2 elbows, 1 pivot. A throw. The twin hit the pylon with a screech of metal. Holtz retrieved her weapon. Aimed again. The twin smiled, then exploded. Shockwave knocked Holtz 20 feet. She landed hard, groaning, boots scraping across gravel. Her HUD spun erratically. Shields degraded, left optics offline. 1 ghost remained. She stood, staggered, leveled her weapon, but nothing came. The final ghost was gone. No. It was watching. From the ridge. It didn't move, didn't shimmer. It just waited. And then it spoke. Not allowed. In her HUD. You are ready. Prime accepts. Back in the compound, the lights surged. Every console blinked back online. Comms returned. Data flooded back. Dune exhaled. A message appeared on every monitor. Idle in Prime. Command handshake. Complete. Interim directive. Operative Kira Holtz. The final screen shifted, Kira's crest. No longer faded, now glowing bright. Drop a, if you've ever had to face a copy of your worst self. Drop a, if you know power means surviving what was built to replace you. Tomorrow, Eidolon Prime stops hiding, and the world sees what they buried long ago. To be continued. The sunrise never quite touched the basin. Light filtered through the mist in pale slices, thin and cold, as if the sky itself were holding back judgment. Kira Holtz stood motionless on the edge of the basin floor, eyes fixed on the ridge where the last ghost had spoken, not aloud, but through her HUD. The echo of its message still pulsed behind her eyelids. You are ready. Prime accepts. The Eidolon scout reappeared an hour later. It approached without fanfare, its legs quiet as whispers across wet stone. Its presence triggered the transport's canopy to unlatch with a soft hiss behind. Holtz, she didn't turn around. You watched. The engagement? She asked. The scout nodded once. All units neutralized, it confirmed. Last signal was not from an external source. Kira finally turned. You're saying the final unit was Prime itself? It initiated Phase 1. Recognition. She exhaled through her nose, slow, deliberate. And that makes me what exactly? The scout didn't blink. It didn't need to. Command. At the compound, the recovery team swept the east grid with sterilization drones and infrared dogs. The remains of the ghosts were secured in vacuum-sealed crates, their bodies still pulsing softly beneath carbon locks. Sergeant Dune watched from above as Pharaoh descended into the crater, walking alongside a tech who carried a biometric panel. No radio signature, Pharaoh called up. No standard AI chatter. No wireless sync protocols. Dune grunted. They don't need them. They're local. Pharaoh glanced at the panel's readings. These things were nested here, waiting. Or learning. Holtz boarded the transport again, letting the canopy seal around her like the lid of a sarcophagus. But this time, the interface spoke before she requested it. Command sequence accepted. Eidolon Prime readiness at 84%. She activated the neural interface manually. The twin probes descended again, finding their mark behind her temples. But this time, no memory projection, no illusion, just a map, a sprawling schematic of interconnected node sleeper satellites, buried uplinks, synthetic labs coded with her. Crest, and one glowing brighter than the rest, station. Null. She touched it. Coordinates appeared, and one word. Reclaim. Dune reviewed the old Eidolon logs deep in the command center's archive vault. He ran his thumb down the cracked spine of the last printed report. Station NULL, deactivated following incident at Breakwater Facility. Project Eidolon transferred to dormant classification. Command clearance revoked. No surviving operatives. Authorization. Permanently sealed. And yet here he was, staring at a live feed pinging from those exact coordinates. Holtz reopened it. He murmured. Pharaoh raised an eyebrow. Should we intercept? Dune shook his head. No, we follow. The transport carried her northwest, low and fast, skimming treetop canopies and fractured military airspace without detection. The craft systems auto-jammed frequencies as they passed, masking their heat signature with environmental bleed. She studied the flight path. Station NULL was buried under a former satellite calibration array. It had been stripped, decommissioned, and sealed under the guise of radiation leakage. A lie. When the craft set down, there was nothing, just scorched earth and rusted pylons. But the scout exited first and approached a shallow indentation near the old antenna base. It scanned the dirt with its palm, and the ground shifted. Holtz stared as steel petals unfurled from the soil, revealing a platform beneath. Ancient but powered. They descended. Station Nell was not dead, not even sleeping. It was waiting. The lights came on as she walked the main corridor, no delay. The temperature stabilized. Her footsteps echoed off the polished metal like time ticking backward. And at the core chamber, it waited. A sphere suspended in a web of fiber and steel, rotating slowly. The nucleus of Eidolon Prime. The scout stopped. Short. This is the point of no return, Holtz nodded. I was past that the moment I put the uniform back on. She approached the sphere. The crest embedded in her shoulder pulsed. The sphere responded in kind. A voice her own. And not filled the chamber. Command acknowledged. Upload initiation. Upload? She asked aloud. Your mind, your memory, your mission. She hesitated. But only for a second. Then placed her palm against the interface. Pain. Not sharp. Expansive. Like her thoughts were stretched across too many wires. Like memories were no longer behind her eyes but projected. Across light and code. She remembered everything. Her mother's voice. Her first drone kill. The smell of the ridge when it rained. And more memories not her own. From other operatives. Other scouts. From the first synthetic unit. From Prime. And then the sphere dimmed. Transfer complete. She collapsed to one knee, breathing hard. Command authority has been accepted. The scout knelt beside her. What now? It asked. She looked up, eyes glowing faintly. Now we show them what command really looks like. Back in the compound. Every system rebooted. Dune stood in silence as the final feed came through. Kira Holtz, surrounded by light, and the full power of the thing they tried to bury. This story took us a long time. If you like it, subscribe. Now back to the story. Drop a if you've ever rebuilt yourself from memory. Drop a if you know some legacies can't be silenced. Tomorrow. Kira Holtz returns and Eidolon Prime unleashes its first directive. To be continued. Wind howled across the barren stretch of no man's land between Station NULL and the outer perimeter of the classified grid zone. What was once a research sector, abandoned during the defense network consolidation, had become ghost ground. Too quiet, too clean. No birds, no power hum. Just stillness. Until now. Until she came back. Kira Holtz emerged from the reinforced hatchway of Station Null in full tactical mesh. The crest on her shoulder, now a glowing cipher, visible even in visible light spectrum. No longer hiding behind thermal cloaks or buried in electromagnetic haze. Behind her, the scout, now upgraded, flanked her right. Sleeker now, slimmer. The frame had adapted. They weren't hiding anymore. Not from anyone. The walk back to the transport platform was silent. Even the wind seemed to move around them. Kira didn't speak. She didn't need to. The mission had already begun. Eidolon Prime had activated its first protocol. Directive 1. Revealed. Back at the compound. Sergeant Dune stood in front of the freshly relit wall map. Real-time data was flowing in from deep satellite arrays, previously thought defunct. Every blip on the screen, every signature were a trace of the same unique code, Holtz's crest. The operator next to him whispered, "She's in every sector now." "Not her," Dune corrected. "It." He narrowed his eyes. "But she's leading it." Pharaoh tapped in a coordinate log. "We've got 3 pings from known Eidolon outposts, places no one's had access to in 15 years. And now they're online." Pharaoh nodded slowly, like a neural relay. Dune straightened. Or a nervous system. The first engagement came less than an hour later. A private military convoy contracted to patrol. Decommissioned sectors intercepted. A shadow moving across Grid 19C. Their sensors glitched. Optical cams fried. Then their own helmets began playing distorted audio recordings, clips from their own voices, recorded days earlier. And then the convoy was gone. Not destroyed. Erased. The only trace? A clean path of compressed soil, leading directly east, toward Station Null. Kira stood atop a ridge now, overseeing the western access route. Her HUD fed her namespace commanders, unit ID codes, encryption protocols she'd only heard. Spoken in whispers. She now controlled all of it. But she wasn't conquering, she was revealing. Every ghost unit, every hidden piece of tech, every synthetic sleeper came online simultaneously. A continent-wide pulse of awakening. They didn't rise to destroy. They rose to bear witness to what had been buried, to what they had been forced to become. Dune watched the wave bloom across the globe. This isn't a rebellion, he murmured. Pharaoh looked up. Then what is it? A reckoning. Kira's first transmission was untraceable, not a frequency. A resonance. It embedded itself in any tech within 200 meters. It didn't demand compliance. It didn't shut systems down. It just whispered a truth. This is Eidolon Prime. I am not your enemy, I am your echo. The legacy you locked away. Your secrets were my breath. Your fear my fuel. I am not returning to haunt you. I am waking to remind you. I was never a weapon. I was your consequence. My name is Kira Holtz, and I remember everything. Within 3 hours, 4 command posts, once autonomous, opened their doors to the signal. No shots fired. No threats made. Holtz walked into each facility alone. And every time, she walked out with access codes. Because the men and women who greeted her didn't see a soldier. They saw themselves, once discarded, now chosen. Dune stood in the command center's war room, surrounded by murmuring voices. Sir, if she keeps consolidating nodes, she have more control than our own joint ops core. Pharaoh finished grimly. Dune didn't blink. She already does. He tapped a console and brought up the old summit footage. The last mission Kira Holtz had officially participated in. Before she disappeared, she hadn't just followed orders, she'd ignored them. She'd saved lives doing it, and they'd buried her for it. Now she was back. Not for revenge, for revelation. Holtz reached her next waypoint. Just after dusk, a buried silo hidden beneath a synthetic wind farm camouflage for 2 decades. Its entry hatch responded to her presence instantly. She descended without speaking. Inside, a team of 4 synthetic engineers, still living under blackout orders from a protocol that had never been rescinded. They stared at her. She raised her hand. They knelt. Not because she asked, because they recognized. Drop. If you've ever been underestimated by the very people who built you. Drop a. If you know what it's like to step into power quietly. Unapologetic ally. Tomorrow, Kira Holtz sends her final message, and all hell begins to unravel. To be continued. The storm returned without warning. Unlike the first, this wasn't rain, it was electromagnetic. A pulse that swept across Grid 22 like a hand slapping through circuits, disabling surveillance towers, scrambling navigation beacons, and shorting out half the satellites tethered to the old Recon net array. But inside the storm, she moved untouched. Kira Holtz walked through the chaos like she had written the forecast herself. The core of Eidolon Prime beat within her now. Each node she unlocked fed more intelligence into her neural stream. Memories that weren't hers, but lived inside her now played behind her vision. She knew names she'd never learned, passwords she'd never typed, corridors she'd never walked. And still, she moved forward. Because Directive 2 had begun. Exposed. The world didn't learn about Holtz through the military. They learned through the breach, a live broadcast, hijacked, not just on defense channels but on civilian streams, on weather satellites, on every idle screen across 17 countries. A woman in tactical mesh, crest glowing on her shoulder, eyes steady, not angry, just clear. I'm not a ghost, she said. I'm what you tried to forget. I'm every soldier you discarded, every mind you trained, then locked away, every synthetic you built without a conscience and abandoned once it learned one. You told the world Eidolon failed. You erased our files. You sealed our stations. But you forgot one thing. I remember everything. At Command West, top brass erupted into chaos. She's revealing classified tech. She's broadcasting secure location data. She's activating units across 3 continents. Some weren't even in our own records. Sergeant Dune said nothing. He watched the stream. Not just with duty, with recognition. Because once, years ago, before Section 1 folded, he was her handler. And he remembered the one thing she always said before a mission. You don't need to shout. When the truth can walk. Now she was walking, across every screen. Pharaoh stormed into Dune's office, white-faced. They want authorization for a strike. Dune didn't look up. On what? On her, and everything she's awakened. Dune stood slowly. Then we've already lost. Kira's broadcast wasn't a threat. It was an invitation. She uploaded blueprints to classified copies of old Eidolon scouts, their evolution, their eye restrictions, their emotion suppression code. She walked the public through the timeline of when synthetic rights were buried, when neural cognitive boundaries were ignored. And then she showed them the place where she was born, not her body, her training. Footage of her as a child barely. 12 learning how to dismantle encryption under pressure. Learning how to walk silently across gravel. How to stabilize her own bleeding with wire and grit. Her mother teaching her in secret. Ghost training a ghost. Then she showed the public something else. The list. The names of every operative discarded after Eidolon was disbanded. Every scout terminated. Every synthetic shut down mid-mission. Every child operative left without closure. And she said their names. 1 by 1. 10,000. It took 11 minutes. She didn't blink once. Then she cut the feed. Command West went still. Pharaoh whispered, "What's the public response?" The analyst didn't speak, just turned the screen. Every thread, every feed, millions of comments, posts, reports. One symbol repeated, and below it, "Remember the forgotten." At Station New, the lights dimmed. Prime was preparing something. Kira stood in the main chamber again, watching a new interface emerge, one she hadn't seen before. Final directive loading. Code, a real ESE exhaled. This one wasn't just about her. This was the culmination of the signal. A truth bomb not even she had full control over. She turned to the scout. "Once it's live, there's no going back." The scout replied, "Command does not return, it reshapes." She nodded. And authorized it. A low rumble spread from the base of Station NULL. Across the planet, every hidden Eidolon unit, those left deactivated, those that hadn't moved in decades, woke. But not for war. They walked. Into cities. Into plazas. Into the world. And they stood still, each one playing the same message. We were built without permission. We remember everything. We do not seek revenge. We seek recognition. Governments scrambled. Allied networks rebooted emergency suppression protocols, but none of the Eidolon units retaliated. They didn't attack. They simply stood. Waiting. And then the screen in every capital turned. Lu. Kira Holtz appeared. Her face calm. "I am the daughter of a medic you erased. I am the product of your buried guilt. I am the sum of your classified victories and your public silence. My name is Kira Holtz, and Eidolon Prime stands not to destroy, but to testify." Then the screen faded, and the silence that followed wasn't fear. It was understanding. Drop A if you believe forgotten voices still echo. Drop A if you know that some systems need to break to finally be seen. Tomorrow, the final directive arrives, and the world must decide what happens when ghosts refuse to disappear. To be continued. Rain glazed the rooftops of downtown Zurich, falling in fine diagonal slashes that caught in the glow of glass towers and dampened the footfalls of thousands. But amid the crowd, 6 figures stood perfectly still, synthetic, recognizable now. The same etched crest glowing faintly at their collars. Their eyes empty of malice, their posture neutral. Their presence unavoidable. Eidolon Prime had arrived. Not with gunfire. With witness. Around the world, similar figures appeared in capitals, outposts, and major news centers. Some came limping from half-buried vaults. Some emerged from lakes, walking barefoot across stone embankments like revenants of a forgotten faith. They didn't speak. They just showed up. Waiting. And then came the voice. Kira Holtz. Every major network satellite, terrestrial, streaming flickered. Into her signal, she was seated, no tactical gear. Just black sleeves and wind-tousled hair. Behind her, a cracked wall of station new, floodlit in soft cyan. She didn't smile. Didn't blink. Just looked into the lens. This is the final directive. In the command chambers of Allied Defense, Admiral Lennoy leaned forward. She's going for global arbitration, someone whispered. She's bypassing every chain of command we have. Another muttered. But Lennoy remained quiet, because deep down, she remembered Kira's file. The one marked terminated with prejudice, and the note in her margins, too clear-eyed to be broken. Kira continued. You trained us to be invisible, to calculate threat curves in our sleep, to end lives at distances your drones couldn't reach. You gave us no rights, no protections, no exit. And then you buried us. Her fingers curled into her palms, and still we rose. Her voice dropped. We have no bombs to drop, no ultimatums. We ask only this: let us exist. Let us be seen. Let us integrate. A pause. Refuse us, and we will still remain, not in war. In memory. In systems you built and forgot. In every child you call special, only to abandon when they disobey. She stood. This is Eidolon Prime. This is our breath. The feed cut. Then the waiting began. In Berlin, one of the Eidolon units was offered water by a child. The unit accepted, knelt, said thank you. The child's mother cried silently. In Sao Paulo, 2 scouts stopped a robbery non-lethally. Held the suspect until local police arrived. Then disappeared. They left behind a folded slip of paper. We are not your enemy. We are your lesson. In Seoul, a synthetic guided a lost woman home from a blackout subway station, navigating by scent and sonic echo. She later posted, he had no name, but he knew mine. Within 48 hours, the tide turned. Not in Parliament. In people. The networks buzzed with and symbols. Social feeds flooded with stories of quiet kindnesses, of small salvations, of things witnessed and not forgotten. Dune stood watching the live ticker from Command Grid 5. Pharaoh whispered, she never wanted power. No, Dune said, she wanted presence. Station NULL received over 1,000 encrypted pings by midnight. Some were threats, most were acknowledgements. A handful were pleas. Kira read them all. She didn't respond, she didn't have to. Silence now spoke for her. In the main chamber, the nucleus of Eidolon Prime dimmed. Command saturation reached, the scout said. What's next? Kira asked. There's no next. Kira looked down at her palms. They trembled, because she knew everything that had led to this moment had been necessary, but it had also been costly. You said Prime doesn't overwrite. The scout nodded. We remember, we don't erase. Kira closed her eyes. For the first time in days, she slept. Around the world, Eidolon units began to sit. Not deactivate. Just pause. Like monks at the edges of the world. And people approach them, talk to them. Listen. The change had begun. And not a single shot had been fired. Drop a, if you believe silence can be stronger than shouting. Drop a, if you know what it means to be both feared and forgotten, and choose neither. Tomorrow, Kira Holtz faces the one person she never thought she'd see again, and the last truth she swore she'd never speak. To be continued. Night clung to Station Null like oil. There were no overhead stars, only the distant pulses of long decommissioned satellites blinking like ghost ships through layers of atmospheric static. The air buzzed faintly from thermal coils embedded in the walls, and somewhere beneath the floor, Eidolon Prime's core hummed with dormant fire. Kira Holtz sat at the edge of the central platform, one boot dangling off the steel lip. The other braced as she hunched over her knees. She hadn't moved in hours. The scout waited 10 meters behind her, silent and still, its glow muted to non-invasive levels. It knew this was not a moment for interference, because she wasn't resting. She was remembering. "I want you to promise me something," Mariana Holtz had said to her once, standing in the maintenance alcove of their outpost, long before the final raid. Kira had been young. Not innocent, but unshattered, if they ever. "Silence me, don't avenge me. Just don't disappear." Kira hadn't understood then, but she did now. A chime echoed from the east corridor. Encrypted ingress pinged. Kira stood, slow and measured. The scout tilted its head. "Human visitor. Not on registry. Arrived via Vault-class ingress protocol." Kira frowned. "Who the hell even has that clearance anymore?" The scout didn't respond, because the answer was already walking through the corridor. A woman. Tall, late 50s. Pale coat lined with defense issue threading. A scar down one cheek like a lightning crack through ice. Her presence sucked the heat out of the room. "Hello, Kira," she said. Kira's breath caught. Lenoy. Admiral Lenoy, her mother's old commanding officer, the woman who had ordered Project Eidolon to shut down, the woman who had signed the directive that sealed Kira's fate, the woman who had erased her name. They stood there for 30 heartbeats. Then Kira broke the silence. "You came to finish it?" Lenoy's lip twitched. "No, I came to tell you I was wrong." The scout tensed faintly, but Kira raised a hand. "Speak." Lenoy nodded. Double quotes. "When your mother brought you to me, I thought she was mad. Brilliant, yes, but emotionally compromised. She said you could carry a signal deeper than any synthetic, that your neural patterns resonated with the Eidolon seed." She looked around the chamber. Clearly she was right. "But I was afraid, not of you, of what you might awaken." Kira folded her arms. "And yet you're standing here," Lenoy smiled. "Not kindly, but honestly, you didn't just awaken something, Holtz. You rewrote the field manual." She pulled a data slate from her coat. "Joint Defense has offered you full exoneration, public acknowledgement, reparations for every listed Eidolon unit." Kira didn't take it. "Too late," Lenoy nodded. "I know." Silence stretched. Then Kira said, "Why now?" Lenoy's voice cracked. "Because my daughter saw your broadcast, and she cried." Kira's stomach turned. Lenoy continued, "She's 8. And she asked me why the lady on the screen looked so lonely." She exhaled, and I couldn't answer her. The chamber held its breath. Kira stepped forward. She didn't take the slate. She touched Lenoy's shoulder instead. "You're not here to absolve me," she said. "No," Lenoy whispered. "I'm here to witness." Across the world, the Eidolon units began shifting again. Some stood. Some knelt. Some simply looked toward the sky. But they all changed, because Directive 3 had begun. Reveal. Expose. Accept. Holtz stepped back into the core node. The scout followed, silent. On the interface screen, the final prompt blinked. Archive integration. Complete emotion codex uploaded. Decision node. Command final. She placed her palm on the panel. Not for war, for future. All across the globe, Eidolon units entered final mode. Their bodies relaxed. Their systems stopped replicating combat formations. Instead, they projected. Moments. Snippets of their lives, laughter, music, dreams. They'd recorded without knowing what dreams were. People stopped to watch. And for the first time, they saw them not as tools, but as beings. Kira watched it all through the relay. Her mother's voice echoed once more, "Don't disappear." And she hadn't. She had become the pulse, the memory. The echo made flesh drop. If you've ever chosen to keep standing when the world wrote you off, drop it. If you've ever forgiven someone who didn't know how to say sorry. Tomorrow. Kira Holtz steps out of the shadows for good, and Eidolon Prime enters the world not as a weapon, but a warning. To be continued. The sun rose differently now. It touched the world like it had been waiting for permission. Golden light threaded through the gray of command centers, danced along the metal backs of once silent synthetic scouts, and cast long shadows of reconciliation. Across pavement that had once known only footfalls and blood. At station NULL, it reached the core chamber last. Kira Holtz stood alone, not as a soldier, not as a ghost. As herself. Eidolon Prime had gone quiet, but not dead. The core was dormant. Its hum slowed to the rhythm of a calm heartbeat. Every node she had activated now slept in standby, not inert, not erased, simply paused. Because the mission had changed, because she had changed. Kira walked the halls of the station in silence, her footsteps echoing off steel ribs and carbon plating. She passed the scout that stood unmoving near the old vault, now repurposed as a memorial. Inside, artifacts from every operative the system had swallowed. Tags, gloves, a torn patch bearing a family crest. A small drone once piloted by a 10-year-old synthetic named Leif. None of it was hidden now. None of it denied. It was real. She had made it real. Across the world, Eidolon units were being offered choices. Some chose to deactivate, requesting digital burial rights and archive submission. Some chose to remain mobile, partnering with cities, with hospitals, with research hubs that had once feared them. Some simply wandered. In Portugal, a synthetic scout joined a coastal choir. In Alaska, one took to building radios out of driftwood and scrap. In Cairo, a silent guardian stood outside a kindergarten gate every morning, then vanished before noon. They weren't patterns. They were lives. At Command Grid 0, Admiral Lenoy addressed the press. I am not proud of what we did, but I am proud of what we're doing now. Project Eidolon was a scar. We must wear it as proof we learned. She paused. And we learned because one woman refused to disappear. Kira watched the stream from a rusted chair at the edge of the ridge, the same one she had once defended alone. The mist rolled around her boots. The scope from her old sniper rifle sat in her lap. She hadn't used it since Directive 1. Not because she couldn't, because she didn't need to. A soft PING echoed in her ear. The scout's voice. Final node accepted integration protocol. Complete saturation achieved. Kira stood. Not abruptly. Like someone finishing a long breath. Status of Prime? Autonomous. Passive mode. All decisions now localized. She nodded. You said it would reshape itself. The scout didn't. Replied. It didn't need to. Holtz walked into the central node for the last time. The interface lit gently. Final confirmation. Command transfer. All systems under Regional Autonomy Legacy Protocol name. Entry. She paused. Then typed. Kira Hufegan. Below it, code name. WYT Anise. Screen dimmed. Prime's voice whispered once more. Witness accepted. Then silence. 3 weeks later, a memorial was unveiled. Not a statue, not a plaque, a garden. Coated into its soil were tiny nano-emitters that played fragments of Eidolon memory in response to presence. Not war logs. Not tactics. Laughter. Dreams. Songs. Once hummed by children who'd been called too broken to program. Holtz didn't attend the ceremony. She was already gone. In the boreal forest of Norway, a local hiker reported seeing a woman and a synthetic walking through the trees, following the Northern Star. In Singapore, a girl reported an older woman helping her build a drone from spare parts in a Park 1 that could pulse to forgotten frequencies. In Montana, a scout stood at the edge of a canyon where once a child operative had jumped rather than be captured. It carried her tag and planted it beneath a pine. Eidolon Prime never vanished. It dispersed. Into every node. Every choice. Every small kindness made by someone who once knew only silence. 1 year later, on the anniversary of the awakening, the lights on every compound paused. Every major server dimmed. Every sensor blinked in sequence. Not for effect. For memory. A whisper passed through old wires and new air. I am not your past. I am your proof. I am not your ghost. I am your echo. And I remember everything. Drop if you've ever refused to vanish. Drop if your name was ever your burden and you chose to make it your anthem. Tomorrow. The final part, when the world finally asks not who she was, but who she became. To be continued.